welcome to another review room tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about step 2 in our process called setting up groups. Now before I actually click on the set up groups button to show you how that's done, let's show you on the left hand side some of the navigation options. You'll notice that I've clicked on the design tab, and essentially that's opened up a subset of options that I'll be using. These are the 3 steps that we're going to have to go through before we actually go live. So right now we're going to be going to the setup group section, but essentially once your competition is live and once our review room site is available to the public so that they can start applying, if you go to the Manage tab, that's where we're going to spend most of our time. The Manage tab is going to be used to essentially run your review room, but while we're editing things, while we're modifying things, we're going to spend most of our time in the Design tab. So now that we are in the Design tab, let's just go ahead and click on the next step, which is Set Up Groups, and that's going to take us to the next portion, which we're going to be talking about today. So you'll notice right now that there are essentially there's essentially one group right now, and it's called the Applicants group, right? And it's of type Applicant. So what I can do is actually modify this group. So if I right click on it, let's just for a second assume that the TED Prize will give out 2 types of awards. One is for let's say local candidates, and one is for global candidates, right? So assuming that they give out an award on a local level and on a global level. So for that purpose, let's say we're going to have 2 different types of applicant groups. The first group is just called applicants, and that's fine, but let's modify this to make it match the local group more. So before we do that though, let's click on Add Group. And when you click on Add Group, what it's going to do is essentially allow you to create the new group. So I'm going to make sure it's of type applicant, right? And let's call this global applicants. And press create group. So once you do that, that group shows up right over there. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the original group, and we're going to call it local applicant. So I'm going to right click on the applicants group, press edit, and once I do that, it's going to take me to the next page. And on this next page, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the name applicants to local applicants. So now we have 2 applicant groups. And the nice thing about that is that each applicant group can have its own set of tasks to do once they apply to the review room. So maybe the local applicants will fill out a different form and upload a different document than the global applicants. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but it could be the case where each one will submit their own types of information. Now, there's one more thing that we want to do, and that one more thing is, well, let's add 2 judges groups so that they can judge these 2 different applicant group types, right? Because right now we don't have any reviewers on the system. So if I click on Add Group here, then there's another option for me, and it's called the reviewer group. And the reviewer group, let's call it, let's say, local judges, right? Press create. And let's also create another group called, also of type reviewer, called global judges. Now, you don't actually have to have 2 separate reviewer groups. You don't have to have 1 reviewer group per applicant group. It doesn't need to be a 1-to-1 match, but it can be. And for this case, just to show you what this is all about, we're going to create 2 sets of reviewer groups. And you'll notice that once you create a reviewer group, the signups enabled checkbox is not checked by default. So let's just click on Create Group, and we're going to be done with that. And essentially, all of the groups that we've created are now shown here. So let's say that we change our mind for a second, and we don't really want to include local judges, right? We just want to have 1 judge group. Then what I can do is I can select this group and then press delete. Now, before you press delete, you have to make sure that there are no people or members in that particular group, because that'll prevent you from deleting the group, because you know what will happen to the users that are in that group. So just make sure that if you want to delete something, that there are no users currently in that group. But that's actually it for this part of the tutorial. We've talked about how to create groups, and we're actually done with section 1. So we've talked about the front page, what that's going to look like, and we've talked about the different groups that are going to be playing a part in our review room. Now, you'll notice there's no administrator group. That's because that's a default group, and we're an administrator by default, and we'll talk about that a bit more in the next tutorial. Thanks very much, and we're looking forward to seeing you in the next part.